So I'm here to talk. Always good to talk wastewater right before your break. So we will do that and get you all excited. So we're going to give you the basics of septic systems, and then talk you through what the impacts are, how they function, the do's and don'ts. We'll get into some replacements, and septic systems can cause problems, huh? If you don't maintain them and you're not aware of them. So clearly you want to know your system, you want to be aware, and maintenance is going to be key, and hopefully you'll take that away. So this is what we call our heat map of the septic systems in the Lake George Basin. These red dots are properties and septic systems. There is a total of 6,000 systems within the Lake George Basin. And if you notice, there are areas where you don't see them. The Lake George Village, there's a wastewater plant. Up in Bolton, they're connected to a municipal plant. Up in Hague, and then also, Black Point Road up in Ticonderoga, that goes to the Ticonderoga plant. So, but in the Park Commission's inspection program, involves about 2,700 of these. So now we are able to get 2,700 of these systems under inspection. The colored Lake George was actually to be an overlay. What that was to show the impacts that actually septic systems can have. That was actually the color code for chlorophyll A levels, or the microscopic algae that you see in the lake. Red being the higher numbers, green being lower. And if you see, there's a little correlation between the number of septic systems and the level of chlorophyll A. So clearly septic systems, as well as stormwater runoff, as Jim did such a good job in talking about, have an influence on water quality. And this is what happens. You start seeing that algae growing. The impacts of wastewater, human health, obviously E. coli, bacteria, can have health concerns, nutrient pollution, the way that those nutrients leach into the lake and provide that food for algae. And we see that increased algae growth can have impacts, obviously, to recreation. If you've got algae washing up on beaches, there's very prominent property in the town of Bolton where they don't use their own beach because of the amount of algae that's washing up. And obviously that can impact people's property values. The thing only pops up for me. So how does your septic system work? This is what we call a conventional system. Works by gravity, very passive. Jim talked about that. You put it in the ground and it works by itself. Sometimes that's a problem because people think, oh, I just flush and it's gone. But there's really a few components to a septic system. The primary treatment is a septic tank. And we have a cross section here that actually shows the chambers and components where the solids come in and drop out. You have some pipes and baffles so that greases and oils won't flow through and get into your field and clog it. You have a distribution box where actually the water comes in, the effluent out of the tank, and then gets distributed out to the field, which is really, there's different types of absorption fields. A typical system will have perforated pipes surrounded with gravel, but we'll get into some alternative systems. And then there's other site variables. There could be hills you need to pump up, so you could have a pump chamber in that as well. That's typically how a septic system works. And those could last, if they're maintained, 40 to 50 years. So it is, it can function. It does well at water quality protection, but you need to maintain that. And I'm going to say that a few more times. So taking a look, this is your septic tank. Great to look in that, isn't it? But we talked about the importance of a baffle to prevent those solids from going right through the tank and flowing out. What you want is a calming environment so that when water comes in, as it comes in through use, washing machines, it will take time. It will flow through there slowly and solids will drop out. and you want what they call the gray water going out to get further treatment. The distribution box, again, so it comes out of the septic tank, trickles down to here, and then you want to distribute this evenly across your absorption field. It's very important because this water is kind of trickling. It's sometimes when you pump, it'll come in at greater volumes. So they actually have these things called baffle wheels or levelers, because sometimes these boxes get settle a little bit, as things do in the ground, where you can overload particular sides. So you actually can twist these so that you actually have an even elevation across your distribution box. One point, you take a look at this one, you see some of that gray standing water in there. That's actually a condition of failure, because this box, you can see the water is halfway up in the pipes, so therefore it is not draining into the field, and that is actually a condition of failure with the system. And then your absorption field. I always like following Jim Lieberman because he talks about things and saves me time, but we talked about the soils and how it was important and how you want aeration in your soils, and that's very important for the septic system, because that's why you have gravel. You want air coming in. You want air, the oxygen for the bacteria that will help treat, because this is where your treatment actually occurs in your septic system. This is where you get the biological treatment, you get the bacteria, you get the chemical treatment, where these nutrients, contaminants, will actually adhere, bond to the soils, and prevent that from leaching down into the groundwater. This is a alternative system. It's actually a half pipe that's put in an infiltrator system, so that there's actually air all through that. And what that actually does is opens up the soil even more, because with the gravel, you actually lose about 40% of the soil for that effluent to go into because of the gravel, because the gravel is in contact with the soil. There is no gravel, and it's actually 100% open soils to the effluent. So you actually can even improve your treatment. System failure. How do we have that line up top? I'm sorry about that. So how do you know your system is failing? Obviously, backup. If you see backup in your pipes, if you see backup into your house, that's obviously failure, right? If you see green grass grows over the septic system, you've always heard. Well, there's an evidence of it. And really, do you smell an odor? That is usually a good sign for failure too. So these are things that you can do. If you have problems, you hear gurgling in your house, you know, those are ways that you can figure out that you've got a failure. Septic system maintenance, very important. How can you maintain your system? Conserve water is one of the best things you can do. You know, don't run your showers long. Think about conservation toilets. You know, you have toilets that can actually reduce your gallons that you use from 5 gallons, the older toilets, to down to 1, less than that gallon per flush. Very important. That saves your system and saves the burden on it. Pump your tank to remove the solids. So important. You should be doing that every 3 to 4 years. Inspect that system. Make sure that those baffles are in place. When you pump that tank, or it's done by a certified pumper, you actually see the condition of the tank, see if water's coming in from the outlet. If it is, that's a problem, obviously. It means your field is clogged. Maintain your lawn. The reason we say that, you don't want trees growing over your absorption field. Roots love nutrients. I've seen so many pipes where roots just grow right into it, and that winds up being a clogged system again. Protect from traffic, as Jim talked about earlier. Compacting the soils. So you need that aeration in your soils. You drive over your septic field, you're actually destroying that basis for your treatment. So very important to keep traffic from off your fields. Here's a picture of somebody coming in to pump out a tank. They have these things right here. They call it a sludge judge, where you actually take kind of a hollow PVC tube, you dip it down into your tank, and you pull it up and you see how many solids are there. You should pump it out when that tank is 1/3 full. And again, that's an average family about every 3 to 4 years. Your do's and don'ts of your system. Do know your system. You should have plans. That way it makes it easier to find where your tanks are and when you need some maintenance. Do contact professionals when experiencing problems. If you're seeing a backup, you're seeing surfacing water, contact somebody, an engineer or a certified septic hauler to find out. Do maintain your system. If you maintain it, this will last 40 to 50 years. If you don't, it's going to last 5 to 10 years. And think about it. What is your most expensive appliance in your home? Your septic system. That's $20,000 to $25,000, even more. So why not maintain that? And protect your system through daily actions. What do you put down your drain goes into your field? So chemicals can really upset the way a system works. The septic systems work on bacteria, as Jim said earlier, breaks down the pollutants, the loading. You put down chemicals, you put down pesticides, those will kill the bacteria. That's what makes your system work. So think about that. The don'ts. Don't connect your water softener. If you think about, we just talked about how it works with bacteria. How did they preserve meats years ago? They used salt. What happens with a water softener? The byproduct of that is salt. You put that in your septic system, it's going to destroy your septic system. Don't add gasolines, as I said. Don't install garbage disposal. That actually puts a huge biological demand on your system. If you do put in a garbage system, you actually have to make a larger septic system, a larger tank to accept those wastes and the oxygen demands that come from that. Don't flush flushable wipes. They're not flushable. And this is the one thing I give these septic talks a lot. This last one, if you remember one thing, don't ever use Rid-X. It is the worst thing that you can do. Oh, put this in your tank and you will never have to pump it. Well, what happens to the solids? What happens is they rise up and go out in your field and clog it, and that's what will happen. So if you remember one thing and what the Waterkeeper says, don't ever use Rid-X. So other technologies, we have enhanced wastewater treatment systems. We have gravelless systems. We kind of talked about the gravelless peat filter. That's what this photo is. You actually have chambers. Those are about 4 by 6 filled with peat. So you actually, from your septic tank, your effluent goes into the peat, and the biology in the peat that lives on the moss actually helps filter, remove the pollutants, and then that trickles into your absorption field. And then raised systems, where you have constrained soils, where you have clay soils, you may have to bring in some soil to help with that treatment process. So this is a cross section. You may have heard Elgin systems. What this is really a kind of a bundle of plastic, which is kind of rolled up, woven, wrapped tight. And what it does is, you can see the dimensions, it's 3 by 4 by 7 inches. And this actually takes the place of the gravel. This actually provides air to come in. And the one thing that's really neat that people don't think about, so when you're building a system and you drive these trucks with all these tons of gravel and dump it in, what's that doing? It's compacting soils. This, you can actually have guys just walk in with them on their shoulders, put it in the ground, and you reduce all that burden on the soils. These are actually an approved system where you can reduce the size of your absorption field. Very important that they have a layer of soil at the bottom, and that's a specifications, but you get to be allowed to reduce your area of your absorption field due to the higher pollutant removal with this. This is a cross section of what is called an aeration system, enhanced treatment. It's actually got 3 chambers. You'll have a settling chamber right here where your effluent comes in. It trickles into an anaerobic tank, which is very good for removal of nitrogen. This brand actually has plastic balls there. So you've got bacteria that will grow on that. Bacteria needs oxygen, but it's an anaerobic system. So when nitrates come in, NO3, they break down the nitrates to get their oxygen. And then the effluent trickles over into the aeration part of the system where you actually have a blower blowing air in. It has clarification, drops more solids out, and then the aeration actually recycles it to the head of the plant again. I call it, it's actually a mini treatment plant, the same size as a septic tank. And the effluent is again, much higher quality and reduces your need of the size of your absorption field. This is actually a newer system. It's called a shallow system where you're constrained to depth of water. You can actually raise this system up and you have a little bit of a pump system that actually helps distribute that and spread it out. Sometimes they actually don't put the plastic over that, and they actually can use a wildflower mix and it gets uptaken by the mix. So you actually use the vegetation to help treat your effluent. Some examples of replacement systems where we have constrained sites, where you have limited soils, where you have homes that are right next to the lake. What can you do? I mean, these homes are there, they're older camps. To upgrade, what can they do? So they can actually, again, bring in some soil here, build that up and actually pump it up the hill. You can see some of the pump chambers there, and you bring in your, again, your higher quality treatment tanks, the enhanced treatment systems, and build these systems up, build these sites up. So here's a site, again, right along the lake. You got this little kind of feature on your deck, but that actually is covering your enhanced septic system. And then from there, you can actually pump that up the hill, bring it to where there's the soils. Again, soils, steep slopes. What do? You got a home here. They need to replace their system. So on the far side of the house, they put in, again, you bring in, where you limited with the size of the field that you can put in, you need to provide some of that treatment in the tank itself. So you bring in your enhanced septic tank, and then you actually build that soil up here with that retaining wall. Give it a level area, give it plenty of soil so that it can sink through and let the soil do the treatment. Questions on the Lake George Park Commission septic regulations. 2023, Lake George Park Commission put in and adopted the septic regulations, which require every system within 500 feet of the lake or 100 feet of regulated streams are going to be inspected once every 5 years. It's a rotating inspection system. So they're roughly 2,700 systems. So it's going to be about 540 systems a year. There's 3 classifications. There's a failing, which means you need to replace that within 6 months. There is a substandard, which means you may have a pipe that's out of line or a tank that you know, might be cracked or need a replacement. So they give you about 5 years and then you're passing. The first year that they had, roughly about 20 to 25% systems were failing. About the same amount were substandard and about 50% were passing, which is about the average where there are places that put in management systems. And that's why this program was so important. So you think about it, 50% of the systems were not adequately treating wastewater and needed to either be replaced or significant improvements made. Some of the increases that they put in to improve treatment was an increased separation standard to groundwater. Typically, New York State Department of Health had a 2-foot separation. They actually increased it to 3 feet. Again, we talked about the importance of soils. That's where most of your treatment is. That's why they wanted it. Also, the importance of getting that air in there. If you have higher groundwater, You have less air that goes into to provide that oxygen. And this was recommended by an advisory committee. I was part of that. There was town officials that were part of that. There was the county planning department was part of that, as well as some local engineers. And here, if you go to the Lake George Park Commission website, you can actually put in your address and find out when your system is up for inspection by the Park Commission. So funding your new septic systems. We had a website we created a few years ago, safesepticsystems.org. We actually partnered with local banks, Adirondack Trust and Glens Falls National, for low and no interest loans. So if you're looking at upgrading your system, please go visit them and see about that, how that can work for you. New York State has septic system replacement funds, Warren County Planning Department, Washington County Soil and Water, and Essex County. They can give up to $10,000 grant funding. And again, the Lake Impact Fund, this will be a program that will be announced shortly, where it will be a matching grant program. Again, you get the engineered plans, you get your estimate and submit that, and that the LGA will provide a matching grant for you that will also help you with the other grant programs that are available here. Some of our work: municipal wastewater treatment systems. We focused on septic systems, but we work with municipalities. We worked with the town of Lake George, their replacement system, which is working tremendously. They used to have violations every month at their treatment plant. But now they actually have not had any violations since their new plant went on. And they used to have nitrate levels. The standard was 10. That was the limit. They were actually upwards of 25 milligrams per liter. They are now below 2. So you can see it's an incredible success. Worked with the town of Bolton, a wood chip bioreactor. Again, we talked about the anaerobic systems where we actually dig a trench, fill it with wood chips, run your effluent through there, and that bacteria actually cleans up that effluent. Worked with Hewlett's Landing, Hague. We provided a grant for their SBR sequence batch reactor. North Queensbury, I saw Sal here earlier. A few years ago, we were providing grants again for the updating of that bay, who actually created a management district and the North Queensbury district, as well as working with the folks on Rockhurst to try to improve their properties which are so small they cannot actually have compliant systems. So can we put in a system that we actually remove the effluent and sewage from the actual point? We monitor around the Lake George Village system. We monitor around the Bolton Landing system. This is the aerial around Bolton where we monitor the streams and the tributaries around that. Actually see the influence, because you talk about the soils around Lake George, they're sandy. Although there's no surface discharge, we actually find these streams, see the influence of the wastewater plants, because we monitor them well upstream, and then by the time they get down past where the plant is, we actually see the higher contaminant and nitrate levels. The LGA's investment, as we talked about, the North Queensbury, Dunham's Bay District, the Rockhurst Sewer District, you can see the amount of funding that we have put in towards these various projects. And again, the Lake Impact Fund, upwards of $400,000 will be available for grants. And what can you do for your own system? So you need to know your system. You need to maintain it. You need to inspect it. You need to protect it. Again, don't dump chemicals and whatnot down there. And what did I say? Never use? Rid of. Thank you. It made my day. And educate. Understand your system. Understand your water usage. And that's it. I always like to work a picture of my daughter in. This is why we do it. She's jumping off of Agnes Island. We want to keep the water clean, and so we can all enjoy it. So thank you.
We do have a few questions that have come in. The first one: is it a problem if there's a forest growing over a 30-year absorption field?
Yes. No, the roots are very very bad. The roots will go and seek those nutrients, seek the moisture, and they will really, they'll clog the pipe. So yes.
Next question. Does the Lake George Park Commission inspection program open up the distribution box for examination, or do they dig up a sample of soil around the pipes from the distribution box?
Part of their inspection system is you have to have all the tanks exposed so that they can look into it. So yes, you do have to find your distribution box and open it up, because again, it's very important that we know that there's equal distribution through the field.
Okay. And last question, has sewering Black Point Road and Baldwin Road improved water quality in Ticonderoga?
I would say it has. I don't have any water quality information on that, unfortunately, but it would have to, because you're removing any effluent that's going in there, and you're removing it and bringing it to a off-site treatment plant. So I would say that it would, but we don't have the numbers to back that up. So,
Thank you.
okay.